Welcome to our podcast, Resilient Heroes, where we are dedicated to showcasing the incredible journeys and contributions of women in the field of emergency management. I'm your host, Laura James. Welcome back to Resilient Heroes, the podcast that celebrates women who lead with strength and purpose and compassion in the world of emergency management. Today, we have a guest who is a powerhouse in uniform. Staff Sergeant Alicia McCracken is the manager of the Emergency Management Unit with Ontario Provincial Police. Alicia has over 14 years of experience in law enforcement and has worn multiple hats. A frontline officer, a detective, an instructor, a planner, and now she's a strategic leader behind one of Ontario's most critical emergency response system. Alicia, thank you for joining us.
Wow, thank you for having me. That introduction was fantastic. I appreciate that. Very happy to have this time to talk with you, Laura.
And you're our first law enforcement female to join us, so we're really excited that you're first among the ranks. Can you take us back to the beginning and tell us what really inspired you to pursue a career in policing?
So first of all, I hope I am one of many uniform members to come to the podcast. But that being said, it was, as I was growing up, looking back at law enforcement and having almost a stigma or a negative connotation in relation to their roles in the community. If you think back to your childhood, you were probably told, like, if you saw a police officer, they'll get you if you're bad kind of idea, and recognizing that policing is so much more than that. And we are actually pillars in our community, and wanted to exemplify what it really means to be a part of the community and be able to give back and engage with members of the community. So that really ignited that spark for me. And I actually took formal education in relation to a Bachelor of Human Services, focusing in police studies. And during that time, I had the opportunity to become an auxiliary member. And as a volunteer within the communities with a police agency. So I volunteered at Nottawasaga Detachment with the Ontario Provincial Police, where I got insight in relation to some of the community events they're involved in, but additionally had the opportunity to participate in ride-alongs and see what actually the day-to-day operations of policing look like. And that really solidified things for me in relation to my desire to want to be a member of the Ontario Provincial Police and be that person wearing the uniform, and recognizing that really pride makes a difference whenever we're members of the community, and also being able to help serve communities. So.
And you've stayed fairly local over your career to where you grew up. So not just known provincially, but also a leader in your own community.
Yeah, I have stayed fairly local in what we call Central Region within the Ontario Provincial Police. That being said, I have taken different opportunities to be able to explore what policing in the province of Ontario does look like in different areas, whether or not it be deployments for special events in two different regions, or I've also completed what's called our Northern Deployment Program and have been deployed to northern communities, specifically the community of Kanjicum, where I perform general law enforcement duties on 2-week rotational bases to support and supplement the policing services that are up there, to not only increase my understanding, my awareness of how those communities function and operate, but different exposure to ways of life as well as ways of policing the province.
So I'm going to build on that a little bit, because I know you, and you have taken the opportunity to go into different positions to build your portfolio and gain experience sort of across the board in policing, whether that was frontline or, investigations. And you are also a leader in training for OPP as well, that I would like to point out for our listeners. So how did you decide that diverse experience was the way that you wanted to go versus focusing in on, one thing that really sparked your interest?
So one of the things about the OPP as a whole is, due to the size of our service, we do have endless opportunities as it relates to almost having careers within careers. I found for me that it really has been about timing and opportunity to being in the right place, the right time, and creating those strong partnerships or having great mentors to help guide you and support you along your journey. So for me to explore those different opportunities, it was really just looking at different ways in which I could help support organizational and community goals, from moving around to different positions at my first posting location at Caledon Detachment, to then seeking opportunities for development actually in emergency management, and then moving on to our Provincial Police Academy, where I had the opportunity to not only instruct our newest members that were completing their recruit training, but I've also had the opportunity to instruct several senior officer courses, and the invaluable experiences of being able to connect with members across the province and have candid discussions with them about the challenges that they face on a regular basis, or the things that are going well, and how we can actually expand maybe programs that are implemented in one corner of the province that should come to everyone else. It's just been really eye-opening, and I've found that this career has just provided me with so much more than a job. It's just been endless opportunities for different areas to grow and develop, which have led me to being a part of the emergency management unit. And that unique field in which I'm sitting in, as it relates to actually being emergency management within a policing agency, is something so specific, but also impacts the whole organization when we think of things like business continuity or responding to planned or unplanned major events. It's integral for us to all come together, really, to be able to figure out the best way in which we can work with each other and with our partners, internal and external, to be able to have that successful, safe, positive resolution at the end of something.
You just said so much there. I'm going to focus on a couple of things. And one of them, I love that. One of them is, you said there that, there are so many opportunities and you took them when they were of interest to you. And I think that's something that we've heard over and over again from Resilient Heroes, is really take a moment to think about the opportunities that come your way, and don't automatically say no to them, because they may be the right thing for you and the right fit. And oftentimes in our careers, there are other things that, outside influences that may, put the brakes on opportunities. But I would say you're another great example of diverse experiences are shaping your approach to your day-to-day job, but also your crisis leadership skills. So the more you see, the more communities you interact with, the more experience you gain, the more projects and programs you're exposed to, the more you can bring into whatever the crisis of the day may be. And so from that aspect, thank you for sharing that with our listeners. Now, knowing that, and that you decided to pivot a little bit into the emergency management unit, was there something that specifically drew you into the EM world?
So emergency management for me, actually, the interest started before I was hired as a provincial constable. And I was actually completing my degree, where we had to complete 2 different work terms. And during one of those work terms, I actually had the opportunity to work as a summer student with Emergency Management Ontario. So I had been introduced to it back in 2008, and
You got a taste.
I got a taste of the exercise design and what emergency management was and the programs and practices. And it just happened to be that there was a vacancy in that unit after a few years, and it was the right time for me to look at something new. And I made an application, and then the rest is all history for me. But it was just something different whenever I was able to actually connect that the things that EMO was doing and what emergency management was actually transferable into the police world. So I think that largely a lot of our emergency services or even organizations don't recognize the impact in which emergency management has on day-to-day operations. And as you referenced the idea of crisis response, being able to respond to critical incidents, planned or unplanned, large scale or smaller localized events. It's having that capacity, capability, understanding of emergency management, which allows people to be effective when we're looking at the pillars of emergency management and actually being able to address those situations.
And I think that you come at it with a broader perspective of understanding outside the yellow tape what's happening in the broader community, as well as what the police response will be. I really feel that your unit is also looking at the community as a whole approach to ensure that you're working closely with, local government, provincial government, and I love to see that because that's not always the case in every community. But I know that you've been really instrumental in implementing some of the EM programs and methodologies, and that you're working really hard to push forward, real-time, real-life solutions for your organization, and really moving the bar forward. So I'm going to sing your praises in that respect. Now, talk to me a little bit. You have been a trailblazer particularly for women in policing. And so tell me a little bit about why that has been so important to you throughout your career.
So for anybody that has never met me, I am maybe 5'2" on the top end.
Yep.
And petite female anyways. So I can remember back to going through the process, and quite frankly, my parents were scared when I said I wanted to be a police officer and what that would look like. So it's just been really more a path for me. Women in policing has been one area in which I've been able to focus some of my efforts and attention and advocacy towards, but it's recognition more as a whole, the importance of each individual recognizing that they have a role to be an agent of change. And there was a pivotal moment a couple years ago where I had the opportunity to attend the International Association of Women Police annual conference, which was held in Niagara Falls. And this was an international conference which brought together thousands of women from countries around the world to unite towards education, community, sense of belonging, and really bringing me back to my roots to recognize the impacts in which women have in policing, to exemplify some of those different traits, skill sets that we bring to policing and how we can help leverage them to better the organization. It is not to highlight that one area of policing is better than another. It is more to create that equity, diversity, inclusion, and recognize the important things in which women are doing to help forward policing as a career, policing as it is an investigative means, and really just how we can actually expand those horizons and really ignite change as it relates to the overall processes, procedures, perception of police in our communities, right? And recognizing the impact in which all of our members have.
And to that end, have you, as you've navigated your career over, 15 years or more, have you had issues that you would say are as a result of a traditionally male-dominated space, which is not dissimilar to most of our resilient heroes who have had some of those pain points?
I would say I'm actually pretty thankful of the fact that I haven't had some of the experiences some of my peers have had, but has there been almost a sense of a requirement to earn equality? There has been situations where I have been able to prove my worth in a sense in order to be a part of that. It's more my desire with the advocacy in relation to women in policing is making sure that women are really staying true to themselves in the fact that we want people to bring their best selves to work, but we want them to bring themselves as they are and be recognized, supported, included for that person that they are, that personality, those unique traits that they bring being a female. It's having members and peers, coworkers, the community as a whole recognize that we all have a place to be here, right? And that this is a safe place for us to be as well. I have faced challenges based off of answering calls for service and different considerations like that in relation to the fact that I am a petite female and perhaps the expectations from the community might be different when I present myself. So that has been a continuous challenge for me, but for myself, it gives me additional perspective to be able to recognize that we need to continue with these efforts for further education, further advocacy, and creating that place where we don't even have to have these conversations anymore, right? The idea behind equality is that we don't even have to have this conversation because it's not an issue. So my goal would be is that we are not looking at anybody based on any of these background circumstances, gender, that we all are on the same level and can come together as a cohesive group or unit to be able to work together towards that common goal in partnership with our communities.
There, folks, is why she's a leader. Now, you mentioned mentorship, and that really kind of ties into this shift that you have really taken to heart in, shifting the idea that you need to come to work as you are, respect all of the qualities and traits and skills and abilities of everyone on our team, regardless of where they come from, how long they've been in the chair. So talk to me a little bit about mentorship, because I know that has been big for you, as you went through school, and it has played a large part for you in your policing career. So talk to us a little bit about how you got into being mentored, and then how now you have sort of flipped the script and you've become a mentor for others.
So mentoring for me is so much more than just trying to check a box or engage with the right person at the right time. Mentoring is a lifelong process, and I coin it to continuous learning. We can be mentors or mentees, as I like to call them, for different reasons, different purposes, and we might have mentors or be mentees for different things. There are some people that I look for mentorship as it relates to that equity, diversity, inclusion lens. There's other people that I lean on whenever I am moving towards growth, development, maybe change in the organization, or just someone that I look up to and that their values resonate with myself. So for me, mentorship has been a part of my life since really I was in high school, I would say, from being a lifeguard, a swim instructor, and being that instructor and having that opportunity to teach and provide mentorship to those that are perhaps coming into jobs positions. And it's something that you will naturally do and gravitate towards once you've found how effective it can be. And for me, I was very thankful that when I started with EOPP, I had a fantastic coach officer, as we call them, who actually be my initial training officer, who provided me with that guidance direction. But I was also surrounded by so many informal coaches and mentors to help me be successful in my first little bit of time, and still remain connected with many of them as I've continued to move on throughout my career. And I recognize the importance of finding mentors that fit what you're looking for right now.
Yeah.
Sometimes those pairings, those partnerships, if they are formally organized, they may or may not work for you, right? You can adapt based on those circumstances, but as a mentor myself now, I have recognized how invaluable and integral mentors have been to me in my success, my growth, my development, and the different roles in which I've taken on in my career, to be able to return and almost pay it forward for the next generation of members to come, in recognizing that I remember when I first started and the things that I wished people told me, or
don't we all?
the conversations that, you had with your mentor, your coach.
Yes.
Recognizing that I really wish someone, I hope these people, had told me that, or those different things that come forward. So I now actively participate in a couple formal mentoring programs annually, but I also have a lot of informal mentorship that if someone calls me, wants some advice about something, I'm more than happy to provide that guidance, support, direction, in recognition that also, if we don't provide these supports, people may not recognize their own skill sets, their effectiveness, their capacity, capabilities to be able to see that agent change, right? So being that person that might spark that interest or give them the push they need to go in that right direction. One of the things that when I was at the conference I told you about was the staggering fact that it was mentioned by several different speakers that too often women don't believe in their own skill sets, their own abilities, and that if you have a job description that a male has, 3 of the 10 qualifications, they're like, I'm going to put in, it's great, no issue. Whereas the female is looking at the list and they've got 9 out of 10 and they feel that they're underqualified and won't actually put in for it, right? So that
they self-disqualify.
Yeah. And we're our own worst enemies sometimes, right? And so if I can be that person, that voice, that shoulder to lean on, and just be that sounding board, and to give someone that words of encouragement, that push to get them to put themselves out of their comfort zone and to take that risk, to take that chance, then I know I've done my job as the mentor, right? And I'm hopefully able to help them build their confidence and skill sets at the same time.
That is so true, and something that I think I haven't heard mentioned on any of our episodes previous to yours. A couple of things: that mentorship is a lifelong learning journey. In fact, we should consider it part of our professional development, because we gain so much from mentees, as much as we gain from the mentors we have and continue to have at every stage of our
Absolutely.
career. And as resilient heroes, we're all listening. We are oftentimes our own worst critic or hardest on ourselves. So hearing you say, if you're qualified, you're qualified. If you're missing one or two things, it's very likely things that can be taught. And just having that sounding board or that champion and cheerleader on your side to say you can do this. And that's a skill that you can bring from some other experience or gain on the job. So I love to hear that you're doing that. And I also love the philosophy that it is a lifelong journey, mentorship and being mentored. So thank you for sharing that with us. Now, in your experience and through the networks that you have put together, have you come up with sort of at this stage of your career, and it'll be interesting if you come back and listen to this in 10 years, what is your leadership philosophy?
My leadership philosophy is that we each have a role to play in the success of an organization. And I believe that my style specifically, as it relates to leadership, is democratic and inclusive. So I see that leadership is something that we cannot do alone. We actually have to embrace those around us. And it is actually a teamwork effort from the perspective that we need to be able to lean on the support of others, create those environments that have trust, that we have that companionship, the friendliness to be able to be a cohesive team and build on it, and have the support for our members, right?
Yes.
The concept that leaders eat last, and that idea that we are putting our teams first before ourselves. We also do need to recognize that we as leaders, we have to be well in order to lead well. And that really, for me, is something that is so important. I actually teach emotional intelligence as well as mindfulness to some of our newer supervisors through our academy, and I've still maintained this even with my current position, in recognition that we need to shape the future leaders of our organization and ensure that we instill proper values across the organization. We focus on people-centered leadership, which really requires people to bring their best selves to work, and also that concept that we want our leaders to be well so that they can actually lead well at the same time. So for me, leadership is about my own growth, development, and effectiveness in a position. I do not pretend to know everything. There are other people that I will lean on, reach out to if I have questions.
Yep.
If I don't have the answer, I will find the answer though, right? And
Yes.
Even having that desire, that drive, that motivation, I do find that it really helps from that perspective. And overall, I do think that leadership is so much more than just me as one person, that it really is a team effort and requires that cohesive sense whenever our members are working together, and also is a democratic process, because I believe that we would not be in the positions that we are without all the people that are surrounding us, supporting us, helping us, and really they're leaders in their own way. We are just the person at that time guiding the group together, right? So
facilitating the process.
We really are just facilitators of that. And it's very challenging when we don't have that recognition from the team members to recognize that they're integral in that process, and that we cannot accomplish anything without all of them, right?
Agreed. And that really is, it is a change in mindset, I would say, over the last decade to have leaders rising to the top who really understand this whole team approach. And I love that that is how you're leading. That is your leadership philosophy. I want to take a step back because you mentioned something that we talk about often on this podcast, and it is how do you ensure your own self resilience. So, and your role in particular, more than some of our guests who have been in EOCs or other places, you are in the thick of the crisis and have been in some parts of your career where your own life is, is at risk potentially, and you've been, inside the yellow tape of responses. So talk to me about, what that feels like, what that looks like, and when you're in an EOC activation that's a long scale emergency, how do you keep yourself resilient? How do you ground yourself? How do you bring yourself back? What do you do in order to ensure that the next day you're bringing the best Alicia to the table that you can for your team?
I think this is a constant learning
Battle.
challenge, and it it changes from situation to situation. So in recent years, mindfulness, meditation, breathing practices have become a way for me to spend just a couple minutes, even just grounding myself, reconnecting, so that I can be more effective. Something I call a take five is sitting in a comfortable seat and just simply taking 5 breaths, and I'll actually count them on my hand. Close your eyes and just simply reset. That's a good way to ground yourself if you are maybe in a long EOC activation. You need a couple minutes to breathe yourself. I also have adapted what I like to call a 2-word check-in. So this is something that you can do individually or with a whole team, maybe at the start of each day, at the start of a long shift, whatever that looks like. But it's looking at 2 words that would describe how you're feeling right now. So there are feeling wheels, if you've ever seen them before, that give you, 60 different ways to describe your mad, sad, happy, all those things. Yes. And it's being able to try and put an actual description on how you're feeling. And this check-in is a gauge for me to then figure out what I need to determine how I can help adapt and support that. Fitness has always been a huge part of my life and continues to be. So fitness is something for me that I will prioritize even in a long-term deployment EOC activation. Fitness is the one thing that I would rather get up a bit earlier and get a workout in. That is more repairing, refreshing, revitalizing to me than getting an extra half hour sleep in my mind. So it's whatever someone finds themselves. But the other checkpoint for me is having social time, is whether or not it's 5 minutes of just talking about something else besides whatever is ongoing. But having that quick opportunity to disconnect is a great way to ground yourself and bring yourself back to the why behind what you're doing.
I like that. And this is a question that applies to me directly, is I sometimes need reminders from my allies around me that it's time for me to regroup. Do you rely on other leaders or your own mentors or your family to say, Alicia, you need to take some downtime?
It has happened before. That being said, I would say in recent years I've actually become more cognizant of it. But I was actually, funny enough, earlier today speaking with someone about alerting, and we ended up having a conversation about being able to say no, or knowing when to say no. And I do find that is something that as females, we have a very hard time with saying no and taking too many things on. So that is something for me that I have made a conscious effort of being able to recognize when my plate is full.
Yes.
And figuring out what I can manage, or letting people know that now is not a good time and maybe I'll have to pass on this opportunity, but hopefully be able to pick that up in the future. But I would say it's a little bit of A and a little bit of B. Sometimes I do need that nudge, that reminder. And I'm very thankful that my husband has a little bit of a connection and a grounding to be like, okay, you've got too much going on right now. But I've also become very aware of, through my trainings and education and teaching that I'm doing, is recognizing when people are doing the same, right? And yes. I will be that person, as that friend, as that mentor, to reach out and say, hey, when was the last time you did something for you? Right?
Yes.
So I think it's something that we all need to be vigilant about for ourselves, but also for everybody that we're working with, as we know that compassion fatigue can set in very quickly sometimes, or even we are filling up everybody else's cup and really leaving our own empty. So finding what that looks like.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, Alicia, we have to close out our conversation together this time, though I would love to invite you back to be part of Resilient Heroes anytime. Maybe next time you join us, we'll focus on a response or an incident that really kind of shaped your path forward. We often like to have somebody back to talk about, a specific project that they worked on or something like that, to really hone in on some things that you'd like to share with our listeners who may have projects in their own lives that they could use some advice on. So if you're open to that, we would love to have you back.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm already trying to think of what we could talk about.
There you go. So I'm going to leave you with that, but I am going to ask you one last question before we close out our conversation, which is, if there was one message that you wanted to leave the women who may be stepping into policing or emergency management, whether they're coming from a different career and it's sort of a lateral shift mid-career, or they're just thinking about what's the right place for them, what's the advice you would give to them?
The hardest question is always the last one. You know, right? That. The one piece of advice I would say is recognize your role as an agent of change and leverage the support networks you have to be able to be successful in whatever your pursuit of happiness is. And I really think that, I just really think that people need to recognize that though you may be one person, that one person has the capacity to make change, and that change does not have to be made alone, that we need to look to other people to support us, to be able to drive that change forward, and also be able to help us get to where we want to be as we work for that success and happiness that we're looking for.
Alicia McCracken, a woman who is leading change from the front lines, behind the scenes at OPP. Thank you so much for joining us today. This conversation was really about relationships, and it was about you finding your purpose, and then you turned that into being an agent of change in your organization. I can't thank you enough for joining us.
Well, thank you so much, Laura, for having me, and I can't wait for our next talk.
Resilient Heroes, until next time, stay strong, stay grounded, and keep building the future of EM. The opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Buffalo Computer Graphics. All content is for informational purposes only. Are you or someone you know a resilient hero and would be interested in contributing to our podcast? We would love to hear from you. Please contact us at rhpodcast@buffalocomputergraphics.com.